Hello, San Francisco, and welcome once again to the Angelic Troublemakers. I'm your host, Alan Jones, and on today's program, messing with that San Francisco Chronicle Pulitzer. I'm being a little sarcastic because of the San Francisco Chronicle's series on juvenile halls. The San Francisco Chronicle has a series, and the series called Vanishing Violence. And in this Vanishing Violence series, they're documenting, hey, crime is down amongst violent crime is down amongst young people. And so they're on this crusade, if you will, to close down juvenile halls. And this Chronicle headline is from today's San Francisco Chronicle. Facing rising costs per youth, San Mateo considers future of juvenile hall. Now, this is a follow-up to what they did in San Francisco. As I mentioned on my program last week, it was a knee-jerk decision by the San Francisco Board of Supervisors to read this Chronicle Vanishing Violence series with its misleading or disingenuous information and gullible, naive, or whatever you want to call it, supervisors thinking money and votes thought, hey, let's get behind this. And so they rushed, put something together. 2 months later, they've announced they're closing the San Francisco Juvenile Hall. Well, as slow as things work in government in general, for them to take that type of an action, it smells funny. And I claim San Francisco Juvenile Hall ain't closing. But San Francisco Chronicle, they decided to go next door and do the same thing. Well, let's talk about that. I highly recommend that people read the San Francisco Chronicle, not for facts and not for fiction, but uh, investigate some of the shenanigans that the San Francisco Chronicle is trying to pull over. I don't know whether these what do you call them, investigative reporters are just trying to win a Pulitzer or what. But I'm going to mess with their Pulitzer without shame. I highly recommend you read this uh, particular article about the possibility of closing down juvenile hall. Now, I will be tying it together to what's going on here in San Francisco. Now, if you look at the fact that the violent crime has dropped to such a drastically low level in the whole state, and it might be across the country, I don't know. Far as juveniles are concerned, it's very encouraging. But to suggest because there's less uh, occupancy, if you will, in these halls, I mean, less than half. Some of them are a third. San Francisco's juvenile hall count for yesterday was 25. How many does the facility hold? 150. Well, that's very encouraging. But the issue is the job is not done. And a lot can happen in the 2 years that they're claiming that it'll take to close this down. They're making a whole bunch of promises here in San Francisco on what they're going to do in its place. And it's full of holes. They're full of holes. Now, if I can try and pull up something on this article, it is just to swing over to, oh, they tricked me. Well, they're not going to let me do it. Anyway, so the issue is the San Francisco Chronicle has tabulated the fact that it's costing $374,000 a year to house one kid up to the San Francisco Juvenile Hall. And with the San Mateo County facility, I think it's $320,000. I can't pull up the information right now, but trust me, it's close. If not, read the article and you'll find the right figures that they're saying. And I had complained about the math that was done in putting these figures together because they missed out on a whole lot. The reason why that there's such a high cost is because when you reduce the count up at the juvenile halls, you don't chop in half the building and send all the employees home. And so you have to give credit to some of the community programs that the city funds in preventing these young people from going to juvenile hall in the first place. And so there's an awful lot that goes into it, and to just look at the cost of one juvenile hall and how it's rising is not um, is not an accurate way to look at the whole situation. This is not a one size fits all. And for people to just think, oh, we're spending too much to house one kid at juvenile hall, well, I did a little math. And I don't know whether you people are aware of this, but San Francisco's famous Golden Gate Bridge, I do not support building a net on the the Golden Gate Bridge to prevent people from jumping off. I just don't support it. But since I'm just one person, $211 million is being spent to erect a net to catch people from jumping off the bridge. Well, if you use that same math that was applied to the San Francisco's Chronicle's report, which is by state data, for how much it costs to house one youth per year in San Francisco, 374, San Mateo, 320, whatever it is. If you were to apply that same math, we will be spending $5,275,000 per person to prevent them from jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. Now, other than myself, who's complaining about that figure? I'm saying that there's an awful lot of silliness going on that just does not fly. San Francisco has a budget of $41 million for its juvenile expenses and basically a lot of prevention. Well, if you calculate that with the average cost uh, that they're spending on reaching out to 5,000 of our 10 to 17-year-olds, you'll find out that we're spending like 8,200 per person. Now, isn't 8,200 a whole lot different than 374,000? Well, the issue is by us reaching out to the 5,000 here in San Francisco in various programs to prevent them from even touching the doors of juvenile hall, some, common sense would say, are going to fall through the crack. And thank God we have a net called juvenile hall. Now, do I sound hypocritical because I don't support the net on the Golden Gate Bridge? Well, you could see it that way. But I'm saying that if we're going to have a net on a bridge to prevent people from falling, why not have a juvenile hall net for those who fall through the cracks and end up locked up? Now, there's a troubling aspect of this Chronicle story. What this Chronicle story does not mention is the fact that 4 juveniles, including an 18-year-old, were housed at the San Francisco Juvenile Hall and were released. The last one was 3 months ago. These 4 individuals took part in a Tanforan shopping mall shooting on July 2nd, a few weeks ago. The lead guy, the main guy, along with 3 others who were in the San Francisco Juvenile Hall, well, guess where they're housed now? San Mateo County Juvenile Hall. Now, if San Francisco can't take care of its juveniles, its evidence suggests they're going over and they're going to be arrested in San Mateo County for some shenanigans. But why is it that the San Francisco Chronicle is not mentioning it in this article? San Francisco Chronicle is not telling the full story. Sure, they're telling some interesting and inspirational stories about people who've been locked up in juvenile halls and jails, prisons, and California Youth Authority and got out to craft a great story. And the Vanishing Violence series, which I can't pull up right now, it looks impressive when you look at it. But it's not telling the full story. And I think that based on what I see the San Francisco Chronicle doing here, is they have some data experts and some investigative reporting, but they don't have any real juvenile justice experts to balance out the story to where the reader can make up his or her mind on whether to support or not support the closing of these facilities. Now, that's a dangerous thing. To say that San Francisco is going to have 25 young people locked up in its facility 2 years from today is ridiculous. Well, that's basically what they're betting on. They're betting on the numbers are going to stay very low to where we're wasting too much money. Well, we're wasting too much money because I say that it's not a waste. Personally, if it cost $1 million to turn some kid's life around, I'll spend it if I had it. Keep in mind one other thing. The proponents of this measure to close down juvenile hall in San Francisco, they are saying spending $374,000 to house one kid up at the juvenile hall is way too much money. Unacceptable is what Supervisor Hillary Roland said. Well, if that's true, this same supervisor has suggested that we are spending $6 million to create a shrine for a deceased white man at San Francisco International Airport. Now, I'd rather spend the $6 million on one kid before I spend it on this dead politician. And so I'm saying that it's disingenuous to say that we are not going to spend, or we're spending too much to house young people up at the juvenile hall, but then turn around and have a celebration for the opening of this wing of the international airport dedicated to this one dead supervisor. It just is not making sense to me. And I suggest politics, self-serving politics, votes is basically the motive for this action. I hate to be cynical, but I really believe that a lot of the laws that our legislature in San Francisco are promoting, passing, and whatever, trying to pass, is based on one individual's aspirations for higher office. Because if you can challenge the next person in line by saying, I closed down juvenile hall, I got us to build a shrine to a gay man who's dead, votes, 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 votes. And then the San Francisco Chronicle to be used to justify some of these actions. And for the San Francisco Chronicle, I understand how they operate. And that's why I'm messing with their Pulitzer Prize attempts in this series of articles. I know enough about newsrooms to know that when somebody does a story, there's a whole bunch of patting on the back. Good job, Johnson. Good job, Mary Ellen, on different stories. I am very impressed by the story out of Miami, where a couple of years ago, a Miami investigative reporter did a series on a man by the name of Jeffrey Epstein, who was supposed to be a billionaire, and how he got a sweetheart deal when he was molesting and raping 13-year-olds. And so the fact that the pressure was put on those in charge, a closer look into this story, and voila, that guy is arrested today. And he'll never get out of jail or prison. He's headed to prison for his crimes. And so I applaud good journalism. But bringing that back to here, San Francisco Chronicle, which I must say I'm biased, I think the San Francisco Chronicle is a racist paper. That's my personal opinion. But for the Chronicle to have people putting together stories saying that we should close down the juvenile hall here, I see the reporters in this. Because one of them contacted me and wanted to speak with me. We had a interesting half an hour conversation. The person said they'd called me back, and the reason why they didn't is because I was not in line with what they were trying to do. I pointed out a few things I just didn't believe were fact. And so, because I won't fit into what they're trying to promote, they went around looking for others. And they got a whole bunch of other people to fall in line. Yeah, close down juvenile hall. Yeah, no kid should be locked up. Well, quite frankly, this is not a one size fits all. As I mentioned last week, there have been some very serious crimes committed by young people. And I have asked many people if you would consider the fact that what do you do with a teenager who runs over a police officer with a stolen car? Where do you put that person? Send them back home? No. That person needs to be in a facility to where they can get some help in understanding the error in their way, because they didn't get that at home. And so to have a place for young people such as, and I admit this story is more than 36 years old. When I first came into the San Francisco Juvenile Hall, one of the first detainees that were in there that I met was the most polite young 17-year-old, but he beat to death his adoptive parents with a baseball bat. And so when you think of the fact that there are some young people who are that out of control, to say today, oh, we'll just build another place for them and house them in another secure facility. Well, I can guarantee you that same secure facility is going to cost $374,000 a year or more to house the person there for a year, because the judicial process is going to take a while. They're not going to just, you're guilty, and send this person away. There's a process. And for the more serious cases, to have these people twiddling their thumbs at age 17, 16, what's going to happen to their faith after they took somebody's life. No, you need someplace that's secure. And because young people don't like concrete, which is usually what they see inside of a jail, well, call me cruel. Well, my only suggestion is don't commit a crime. But the fact that everybody is coddling young people, it's going to backfire. And for the San Francisco Chronicle to want to have a hand in it, you think that they're going to take any of the blame? Oh, no. They're going to take their Pulitzer and run with it. On to the next story. But I'm saying that you watch and you read the Chronicle and how they're trying to shape the future of San Francisco or the Bay Area as far as criminal justice reform. These aren't the experts on criminal justice reform. These are journalists trying to get a medal. And I'm saying you cannot have real juvenile justice reform when the people who are shaping the argument, the debate, are journalists who are looking for an award. And I'm telling you, I know enough about humans that people who are looking to further their career don't mind using juvenile halls as a stepping stone. And if you get some nice, flowery, pretty little stories put together, and then you just decide that you're going to run it up the flagpole, that's not reform. If you give a balanced assessment of what's going on, that the public weigh in, and that the public demand change or suggest where we should make strides to improve. Because I can guarantee you one thing. The young people that the San Francisco Chronicle are suggesting should not be locked up in juvenile hall, I guarantee you they're not going to take them into their homes. The fact is there's an awful lot of people who are saying, do this, do that, do this, do that. But if you ask them to fly an airplane, the only thing that they're going to do is wet their pants. The fact of the matter is, you buy your seat, you pack your bags, you get into the airplane, and you sit down. You don't go into the cockpit wanting to fly the plane. Well, that's what San Francisco Juvenile Hall is doing. And they want to be rewarded for it. Well, I'm not rewarding them. I'm messing with their approach to getting a Pulitzer. I'm saying shame on you, San Francisco Chronicle, for using young people to try and get an award for journalism. I should say journalism, because it's not journalism when you are slanting the evidence or the data that is so far out of whack that it makes your argument look like a valid one. There's a whole lot that goes into keeping the person out of juvenile hall, keeping the numbers down, but that is no reason to close down a juvenile hall. And shame on you for wanting to do what you did in San Francisco to San Mateo.